Okay, welcome everyone. It is great to be here together. My name is Aaron Bloomgarden. I'm the CEO of Emergent. For those of you who don't know, Emergent is the coordinator of the LEAF Coalition. We get asked all the time, what's the difference between Emergent and LEAF? Emergent is an NGO that coordinates the LEAF Coalition. We also act as the transaction intermediary. LEAF is the coalition, is the initiative. So there's not an organization called LEAF. This is an exciting moment for us with COP30 coming up in the forest, the first forest COP, and highlighting the importance of protecting and restoring the world's forests. And what better time to convene here in New York for a robust conversation around what we are doing with the LEAF Coalition and at Emergent and all of our partners here. So it is so great to see so many friendly faces. Many of you have been around since the very beginning and been with us through this journey, and others who are just joining and as new friends. So welcome everyone. We have a terrific agenda, an action-packed agenda. We're going to start with a showcase of host jurisdictions, forest jurisdictions, hear directly from them on what they're doing on the ground to protect and restore their forests. And then we're going to hear from some corporates, and then we have some special guests after that. First, quick housekeeping. If you need interpretation, we've got English on channel 1, Spanish on channel 2, and Portuguese on channel 5. We're a little bit behind schedule, so I'm going to keep it there. And it's my absolute pleasure to introduce our host here at Latham & Watkins, an old friend and colleague, and we're very grateful for JP and Latham for supporting Emergent, supporting the LEAF Coalition on a pro bono basis over the last few years. So JP, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Aaron. My name is JP Brisson, and I am a partner at Latham & Watkins. It is a pleasure for me to welcome you to this session today. Extremely excited to hear the showcases and the panel that will convene later today. As you may know, Latham is a global law firm. You are in the New York office, but we have offices globally in the United States, in Europe, and in Asia as well. And we have an energy transition team that includes a climate change team. And our climate change team has been has had the pleasure to work with the fantastic team at Emergent over the last 3 to 4 years on the legal agreements that support this initiative. So I've met some of you already for the first time, and you now finally see the face behind the legal agreements. So you can direct all the criticism that you've been airing to Emergent for the last 3 years to me. And I will be happy to provide explanations if needed. But on a serious note, it's been an absolute pleasure to work with all of you. I think this is a great initiative. Latham is fully behind the objective of the coalition, and we are delighted to have the opportunity to work with you. A few housekeeping notes. The bathrooms are one corridor in the back behind the corridor right outside this conference room. After the panel, the showcases and the panel and the conclusion, we invite you to stay for cocktails. The cocktails and the canapes are going to be just on the other side of this wall. We're going to have a great time, and we will go until 7:30, I believe. The goal of this session, as you know, is to foster a dialogue between companies who are willing to do the right thing and send a signal about the protection of the forest, and those countries that also have an interest in sending a signal about the importance of climate change and addressing the issues associated with greenhouse gases, and who wish to make a difference with the protection of the forest. So very much look forward to the discussion today. And again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you again, JP. Really, I really appreciate all your help on the legal side. And I think Alejandra is going to be delighted to know You can send all the criticism to JP. And also thank you for hosting us here. Very, very generous. And so without further ado, we're going to move into the host jurisdiction showcase. And I would like to bring my colleagues. Emergent, we have, for those of you who've met the team, we've got some of the most passionate, capable, just an incredible team. And so some of our leaders of our team, Sean, who is our Chief Partnership Officer, and Edwina, who's our Senior Vice President of Corporate Engagement. So please welcome Sean and Edwina. Thank you.
Hey. My mic on. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm mic'd up, but it's not always clear when you're mic'd up. Okay, great. So I'm Sean Frisbee, as Erin said, I'm the Chief Partnerships Officer at Emergent, and I work more on the supply side with the forest governments that are working to reduce deforestation. Edwina?
And hello, everyone. As Erin mentioned, it's corporate engagement with Emergent Leaf Coalition, which means I work with our over 30 companies that are participating and working through these first jurisdictional transactions for credits. So with that, I'd like to actually introduce 3 of our corporate representatives that will be coming up. We have Matthias Berninger from Bayer, who's the Executive Vice President of Sustainability in Science, Health, Safety and Environment and Public Affairs. A nice long title for a fantastic role. So come on up, please, Matthias. We also have Jamie Mulligan, Head of Carbon Neutralization at Amazon, and Elise Sawyer from EY, Global Sustainability Leader, integrating environmental issues throughout their organization. Welcome.
Okay, and then on the forest government side, we're very honored to be joined by Dr. Joseph Appiah-Gyapong, Head of Donor Relations and Projects at the Ghana Forestry Commission, and also by Maureen Lazarech, Secretary of Environment for the Brazilian state of Mato Grosso. And I just want to check, Renata, are you able to come up as well? Great, thank you. Sorry, I didn't see you there. Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Thanks, no worries. Also, so we have Renata Nobre, Deputy Secretary for Water and Climate Management for the Brazilian state of Pará. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring you a little bit into this world of LEAF, right? And you're going to see it in action, because this is what we do. We have the supply side, we also have the demand side, and then here in the middle you have Emergent, which is kind of like playing the glue between the 2 halves of the LEAF coalition. This could be one of the, I guess it's over 1,000 Zoom calls that we've pulled together since this thing was created, but thankfully it's not. This is in person, and we've got all of you here to see kind of how it works. And we're going to start with a showcase from each of the jurisdictions. They're at different stages, right? So we've got Ghana, which has been probably the most advanced and it's getting very close. We all hope to the credit issuance. And then we have Pará, which is in the consultation stage. And then we have Mato Grosso, which is, been developing a RED program for a very long time and is now considering how to take that to the market.
Great. And so the plan is to be an interactive session. Sean and I are host. The idea is to have a bit of a fireside chat after hearing from our jurisdictions and their programs. We're also going to have a few questions to hear from the corporates around why jurisdictional RED Plus and LEAF and tropical forests are so important to their strategies. So with that, I think we can probably sit down.
Yes.
Make ourselves comfortable.
And I think to get started, if I could invite you, Dr. Appiah, to start with a presentation on the amazing work that you've been doing in Ghana, please.
Well, Sean, thank you. And I'm happy to be here in this such a wonderful meeting. And Sean, I just want to pick up from your word that Ghana has done a lot, as you're saying. But I have to be very frank, Ghana has come to this far because there's somebody here in this room who actually championed and pushed and made Ghana what we are all seeing. And Rosalind, can we give you a clap? It's such a wonderful and fantastic and has pushed a lot, done a lot to this far. So I'm picking up from what she's done. And so Rosalind, thank you so much. And I'm so grateful to you. You've told me. Right. So in terms of the forest protection, we're looking at the drivers of deforestation, where we're looking at agriculture and look at mining and also logging as one of the key things that we pushes us in terms of degradation, forest degradation that we're looking at. And we're also looking at in terms of their support in terms of the legal regime. We have the forest resource management support. Ghana also entered into the voluntary partnership agreement where Ghana has established a wood tracking system that is able to track the wood from the forest floor right through the processing to export. And also, in terms of mining, Ghana has come up with, there's a mining law which is supposed to guide responsible mining to avoid deforestation in this regard. And also there's an act, the Wildlife Resource Management Act. It's one of the key pillars that Ghana has used to manage its resources and forest degradation. Now, in terms of inclusivity, we want to assure that the Ghana Cocoa Red Plus program, which as part of the Red Plus program was done, has taken a leverage on what we call the community resource management activities, where the foundation is enhancing the communities to be able to have the platform in terms of governance, to be able to manage and also contribute to the management of the resources. There's also a gender action plan where consciously developed under Red Plus programs is able to ensure that about at least 30 or 40% of all programs have women and children considered, and the vulnerables as well. And one of the key things that was championed under the program is the benefit sharing plan, which is very critical because we believe that the forest, at the end of the day, the communities and local communities in Ghana, we don't have indigenous people, the local communities rather receive directly all the carbon benefits because they support in the management of the forest reserve. And as such, the plan is that 69% goes to the communities, where 20% goes to government, and 4% also to the management unit as such. And also under the trees program, where the benefit sharing with the communities also underwent great consultation with the chiefs, with all stakeholders on the local community to discuss the kind of benefit sharing arrangement that is expected to be there. Now, in terms of how investors can support, we believe that we need strategic partnerships. One of the key activities where we are currently doing, we need that strategic partnerships. We also have to build capacity in the local, in terms of the institutions that are available in managing. And also upfront catalytic financing is something that we are looking to achieve. So on this note, I want to say thank you very much and that we can open up for further discussion. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Abia, and thank you for that wonderful presentation. And also thank you, Rosalind. Ghana has really sort of pioneered this approach, and I think it's really helpful to see some of the work that goes on behind the scenes, the scale of it, and also, the consultations and the work that sits behind. So thank you. I know that's just touching on a high level, but a really important detail. And I think if we rewind a couple years ago, if I could start with you, Matthias, in terms of the companies that are supporting these arrangements. We were in Dubai at COP27, and I think you were on stage with us as we celebrated these first ever multi-company sovereign donor transactions by the LEAF Coalition, Ghana alongside Costa Rica being the first jurisdictions. Tell us a little bit from Bayer's perspective, how do tropical forests sit within your corporate strategy, and why jurisdictional REDD and the LEAF approach?
Yeah, first of all, we are a company that has committed to net zero by 2030. We want to remain aligned with what the world has agreed in Paris 10 years ago. And if you are serious about it, you need to do, in my book, 3 things. First of all, you have to grow carbon neutral. unfortunately, that's the least of my worries at the moment. I wish I would worry more about it. I know for you it's a bit tougher, but growing carbon neutral is really important. Secondly, in the decade 2020 to 30, and then the two following decades, each of those decades require that you cut your current emissions in half. That is something we have been quite successful with. But in all fairness, we are standing on the shoulders of a giant, and that is a very disruptive renewable electricity production complex that made that possible. The next couple of years will be ever harder to cut your emissions in half, but you have to stay on it. The third thing is you have to offset the rest in a credible way. And LEAF was one of those initiatives. And when this coalition started to come together, that gave us confidence that you are working on something that really allows us to offset in a credible way. It always takes long to do something credible. I wish we would have been a little bit faster, but I can see the progress year on year. And one thing is really important. A lot has been promised at COP26 in Glasgow. A lot of these promises fell apart. You are, I think, the reason why our promise in Glasgow is still alive and kicking, and I'm very grateful for that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Matthias. And maybe, Elise, if I could turn to you, I know as part of EY's net zero strategy, you're also thinking about how nature-based solutions can form a part of that, both emissions reductions and removals. So talk us through your orientation on this topic and
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So we are a large professional services firm. We have a net zero goal, but as part of our broader environmental strategy, we also recognize that we can't decouple with nature and the impact that we have on nature and the broader investment that needs to be made in nature. And so the exciting thing about LEAF and why we are drawn to it is the fact that we can make impact at scale, that these types of investments can make impact at scale that really brings together the nature and the carbon aspects of it, and does it in a really credible way. As a former auditor and as a company of many auditors, we're all about integrity and credibility, and that's really what has drawn us to this model.
Great. And maybe Jamie, to bring you in, tell us about Forest. How did Forest fit within Amazon's strategy?
Well, we anchored the creation of the LEAF Coalition. We've been here since the very beginnings. It features quite prominently in our strategy. We think about this less from the lens of how do I get some carbon credits that get the grade and keep us out of hot water, and more about if we're going to spend money outside of our value chain voluntarily, I want to have as big an impact as possible. We really think about systems change. And so, I was on a panel this morning, or a roundtable this morning, talking about superpollutants and kind of refrigerant destruction, which is desperately needed. And everyone was sort of lauding the high quality of those credits because you know exactly what you're getting. You know exactly how much gas there was when you destroyed it. But you also know that that's all you're getting. You're getting a ton. You're pretty sure you're getting a ton. And that's really all you're getting. In initiatives like this, oh my God, you get so much more. We're getting clean drinking water in Ghana. We're getting new partnerships between indigenous peoples and governments that can pay dividends for forest protection way outside the accounting boundaries of the carbon standard. I mean, this is like life and death for the climate fight. We're avoiding tipping points. It's very clear to me that this is a very high leverage place to be focusing on climate finance through the carbon market.
Great, thank you, Jamie. So we've heard from three different types of companies around how this approach is fitting within their overall sustainability strategies. I think it's back to you, Sean, to take us on.
Yeah, thanks. I'm going to turn to you, Renata, if that's okay. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the work that Para has now got well underway in creating the Archeries program and your work with LEAF. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Eu vou falar, apesar de falar inglês, minha mother language é português. Já estou misturando tudo na cabeça, então vou logo para o português. Bom, eu vou levantar, pessoal, porque a luz está batendo bem no meu olho. Bom, uma alegria estar aqui falando do nosso trabalho no estado do Pará. Realmente, o estado, ele foi fortemente motivado, né? Então, a gente sempre conversa com a Emergent e a Coalizão LEAF e a gente reconhece e agradece por essa motivação internacional que nos levou a iniciar o nosso programa, né? O nosso programa, ele conseguiu ter uma força, uma estrutura sólida, porque nós já tínhamos, iniciamos o programa de rede em 2022, mas já tínhamos desde 2020 um arcabouço jurídico que trouxe um caminho prévio para esse caminho. Então, tínhamos já instituído uma política estadual para mudanças climáticas, um plano estadual que chamamos de Amazônia Agora, que é o nosso plano de combate ao desmatamento, mas que também traz um elo de desenvolvimento socioeconômico de baixas emissões e um elo de financiamento de longo prazo. Então, a gente já tinha estruturado no nosso legal framework, como eu coloquei ali. Acho que pode voltar? Eu trouxe ali algumas... Eu não estou com o passador e passaram antes do tempo. Pode voltar? O slide? Can I get it? Thank you. So, okay. So, I'm right there. Legal framework and clear goals. Então, esse caminho nos trouxe um efeito massivo no Estado, né? Então, o RED, por si só, ele ainda está em construção, mas nós já tivemos um grande impacto, tanto trazendo uma governança mais fortificada, então criamos uma governança multissetorial, criamos assentos fixos para PIQCTs, né, que chamamos de PIQCTs, e eles atuam fortemente na governança desde o início, desde 2020, mas agora com mais força, trabalhamos na capacitação dessa governança para que eles pudessem ter decisões mais assertivas. Trabalhamos na criação, tanto Acabei o tempo? To speak? Too fast? Sorry. Doing my best with two minutes.
A bit over.
Ok. Então, trabalhamos nas salvaguardas de Cancún, ok? Now better. Trabalhamos muito nessa capacitação. Então, esse período de preparação, né, que a gente chama de Readiness for RED, já foi muito rico para o Estado do Pará. Nós fortalecemos tanto os membros do Estado, que estão hoje representando e conduzindo essa política de uma forma pioneira, eu dizia, porque conseguimos fazer isso com o próprio corpo dos técnicos. Então, a gente recebeu muita transferência de capacidade técnica para poder fazer esse trabalho e conseguimos conduzir aí esse protagonismo local, né? Então, essa preparação com esse fortalecimento tanto da governança, tivemos também a criação de um sistema, estamos finalizando um sistema de indicadores de salvaguardas próprio do Estado do Pará, trazendo a perspectiva do R-Trees e trazendo a perspectiva das salvaguardas de Cancún enquanto as diretrizes primordiais, mas também trazendo esse olhar e a perspectiva local. A nossa situação com a regularidade fundiária, a nossa situação com em nossas comunidades tradicionais específicas que têm a sua forma de organização geográfica, ou algumas não se dividem de forma territorial, mas eles têm uma identidade tradicional que é multilateralizada. Então, a gente traz esse olhar num state level CIS RED Plus de salvaguardas próprio. Tá? E também temos um sistema governamental próprio para MRV, que é o PRODES, e que ele é o nosso sistema e ele é robusto, ele é auditável, ele é um sistema governamental, então ele é público e conferível por todos, então isso traz também essa robustez. E agora também estamos finalizando não, né? Está finalizando o meu tempo, mas estamos iniciando as consultas livre prévio informadas, que elas cresceram, tivemos uma quantidade enorme, como tem ali no último item, temos que fazer 47, porque nós temos um estado que é do tamanho de 2 Franças, então, por demanda deles, ajustamos, pedimos apoio, inclusive muita gratidão pelo NICF, que nos apoiou com o funding para que a gente pudesse fazer essa quantidade de consultas. Não conseguiríamos sem também dos membros aqui da Coalizão Livre. E já estamos na 13ª e pretendemos finalizar até o próximo ano. Então, o que eu podia dizer sobre a inclusividade é que nós fortalecemos as comunidades locais, fortalecemos as suas decisões, os locais onde tudo acontece é a pedido deles, a forma que eles pedem, a comida que eles pedem, todos a minuta de lei e a proposta de repartição de benefícios e os subprogramas, eles são discutidos durante as rodadas, então a gente não leva um documento somente para validação, a gente faz a apresentação, a gente senta com eles e coleta todas as suas sugestões. Então, para além do consentimento, que é o consent, nós temos a contribuição deles na própria política, né? Então, a gente realmente pôde é um orgulho para a gente no Estado estar conduzindo uma política dessa forma e que a gente só conseguiu por apoio de financiamento externo, porque, infelizmente, no Brasil ainda temos muita vulnerabilidade financeira para conseguir fazer políticas nessa escala. Bom, para finalizar, o que os investidores poderiam nos ajudar seria suporte financeiro para as próximas etapas, né? Ainda tem muito o que via ser finalizado, mas a gente até conseguiu muito recentemente esse retorno do NICF, que já nos deu uma tranquilidade com a finalização das consultas e precisamos de capacitação, principalmente técnica, para MRV. Ainda contamos muito com parceiros externos e a gente pretende ter essa autonomia no curto prazo para que a gente possa conduzir o trabalho de uma forma mais no nosso timing, da forma que a gente precisa conduzir, né, sem estar necessariamente dependendo de apoio externo, e comunicação internacional, porque o RED no Brasil ele está sob ataque, né? Então existe alguns caminhos no RED que têm prejudicado muito a mensagem positiva e transformadora dele. Então, temos as próprias comunidades defendendo a permanência do programa, mas temos também aí na mídia, né, um forte contrassenso a esse caminho. Então, é o que pedimos. Muito obrigada.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kanata. I think at Emergent and the LEAF Coalition, you'll hear us often talking about scale in terms of how do we mobilize a new market for jurisdictional credits, mobilize private sector finance to meet the scale of the jurisdictional approach. Ghana and Pará, and we'll come on to Mato Grosso in a minute, really demonstrate the scale of the work that's being done. I think Kanata mentioned that Pará is the size of nearly the size of Western Europe. I think it's 10% of tropical forests globally, a diverse range of local communities, indigenous peoples that are represented in the state. So, scale when we talk about how do we address these global issues is being demonstrated here and really is commendable. And with that, there is also the need to scale the corporate participation in these types of market mechanisms and mobilize the types of finance that's needed. And with that, I'm going to turn back to our corporates in the group who have been really pioneering this approach and leading the way for other corporates to join on in. And if I can turn to Jamie, I think it's almost exactly a year since Amazon kindly hosted us with the Climate Pledge to announce the first LEAF transaction in Brazil with the state of Pará. Tell us a little bit about Amazon and how you're thinking about scale and support to these initiatives.
Well, we need a clear demand signal. That's why we created LEAF in the first place, and Amazon really anchored that as the largest corporate buyer. A couple dozen other companies have since joined, which is incredible. We're sort of waiting on the supply to come through, right? Everyone's sort of in a careful way, making sure that the consultations are done properly, working through the MRV and the verification and issuance process. I'm now focused on the demand side. When that supply comes, these are big programs. I mean, the state of Pará, 10% of global tropical forests. The potential volumes coming from just a place like Pará are really quite massive. And so we have to respond to that. We have to be prepared to rise to that challenge in the voluntary carbon market. And so that's what we've been working on sort of in parallel now. And earlier this year, Amazon launched, we call a credit service, so that we can start to purchase not just for Amazon, but also for our value chain partners, for our suppliers, and for our enterprise customers, so that it's easy for any company in our value chain, which is millions of companies, to participate without having to do their own diligence, without having to, to participate in these kinds of transactions directly, which can take quite a bit of work and quite a bit of thought. So that's something that we've created, and we'll see how well that runs. But we're doing what we can to sort of, not just show up as Amazon, but to create new avenues for the rest of the corporate kind of world to join in. I think there's only 6,000 companies in the world that participate in the carbon market at all. That's like 300 million companies in the world. So we've got to work on that. Everyone's got to get in the game. I think the thing used to be, I'm going to buy enough credits for my scope 1 and 2, and then I get to call myself a carbon neutral operations company, and I check that box. And everyone, that was sort of the fad when people were buying $3 a ton credits. That's behind us. You can't do real climate action for $3 a ton. And now some companies have sort of pulled back. I don't know what the next thing is, where things are, but I guess my message to companies out there is everyone needs to be in the game. You just need to participate. Just buy a little. Start to send funds to Ghana for clean drinking water and health clinics and tree planting and school chairs and watch this flywheel start to turn, and we'll see what happens to the forest. And I think there's going to be a synergistic effect. I think that companies are going to want to be participating in this.
Thanks, Jamie. And Jamie's touched on the wealth of sort of benefits that sit. We talk about a carbon credit as a unit of transaction, but actually, as the presentations have showed us, this is about much more than that, right? This is about extensive consultations with local communities, indigenous peoples, watershed management, the range of ecosystem services that forest preservation provides. And I think with that, it would be interesting to hear from the corporates here, and I won't call on anyone in terms of that aspect of stakeholder participation, the inclusive approach, and that sort of process that Renata has just gone through in terms of engagement with forest communities living in and adjacent to. Why is that important from a corporate perspective, the sort of social aspects of this work?
Take that. Yeah, so as a people business, I think that that translates also to the clients that we serve. And so many of our clients understand that we can't do, their businesses can't do what they do without people. We talk a lot about humans at the center. It is pervasive in what we do around AI. It's pervasive around what we do around technology and other things. The same holds true for here. So that idea of kind of stakeholder inclusion and consultation and really involving the communities around, I think, is core to what we want as an organization and what we know so many of our clients want as well. And so co-benefits for us are kind of a non-negotiable, and it's a nice box to check, but we really mean exactly what you were doing and really working with the communities around you.
Cool. Great. Well, I think we'll keep on going. Back to you, Sean.
Yeah. Okay, so it'd be great to go to the last of our 3 presentations now. And I want to turn to you, Maureen. Tell us a little bit about Mato Grosso. Mato Grosso is a really, really exciting potential partnership that we really, really want to bring to fruition. And I know it builds on years of support from so many people in this room already, including, for example, the UK I see here, and EDF, who've been supporting the REDD+ process in the state for maybe more than 5 years. It'd be great to hear about that story and where you want to take it next. Thank you.
Obrigada, Sean. Também vou falar em português, minha língua mãe. Bom, Mato Grosso é o terceiro maior estado da Amazônia brasileira, vizinho do nosso Pará, tem 903 mil quilômetros quadrados. Nessa extensão territorial gigante estão 3 biomas: a Amazônia Legal, o Cerrado Brasileiro, que é o berço das águas brasileiras, e o Pantanal, a maior planície planície alagável do planeta. Mato Grosso já executa o programa de RED+, numa segunda etapa, estamos executando já há quase 8 anos, mesmo com todos os investimentos realizados a partir do programa, da parceria com o Reino Unido, com a Alemanha, com investimentos próprios do governo, com compromissos sólidos, nós ainda temos um desafio gigante com o desmatamento e a degradação. Nos últimos 20 anos, nós reduzimos 85% do desmatamento no estado, enquanto continuamos sendo um estado produtor. Mas temos sofrido ainda muito com a degradação, mais fortemente nos últimos 5 anos, com incêndios florestais de grandes montas ligadas à mudança climática, à seca resistente, e temos o objetivo de consolidar as iniciativas de tal modo que, de fato, possamos conciliar a conservação com a produção sustentável. Esse é o desafio, porque só comando e controle e ações repressivas nós não conseguimos solidificar essa matriz. Então, o nosso desafio maior nessa estrutura toda de suporte do programa é garantir que haja valor agregado ao produto da Amazônia produzido com legalidade e que isso, de fato, possa promover inclusão social das minorias, das comunidades indígenas, das populações tradicionais, dos pequenos produtores. E, para garantir que essa matriz aconteça, o Estado tem como estrutura da sua produção a conservação, a inclusão associada a essa produção. Para que possamos efetivamente garantir que a inclusão, as consultas estejam atreladas ao programa, nós já temos estruturados neste ambiente de governança o Fórum de Mudanças Climáticas, o Conselho de Gestão de RED+, a Comissão de Governança Indígena do nosso programa, o Conselho de Povos e Comunidades Tradicionais, e realizamos, no âmbito do programa, a maior consulta da Amazônia brasileira. Foram 12 oficinas com povos indígenas e mais 5 oficinas com povos e comunidades tradicionais, e atualmente estamos realizando o plano de engajamento para consultas em elaboração com apoio da Embaixada Britânica. E, obviamente, que nós ainda temos os nossos desafios e, dentro da ótica do objetivo da fala, é como ainda podemos avançar com o apoio do programa, da coalizão e do Emergent. Temos conversado muito que o que nos impede hoje no Brasil de avançar é um pouco da insegurança jurídica, de como solidificar os programas, atendendo à legislação brasileira e conferindo, tanto ao poder público quanto aos investidores, um ambiente sólido para que o programa possa acontecer, garantindo todos os processos legais. Assim como registrou a Renata, nós ainda precisamos solidificar o conhecimento e o aprendizado sobre a MRV, e para que isso possa, de fato, ser estruturado no âmbito dos estados, e também preparar os estados, os consultores, para que essas consultas possam acontecer de forma mais ágil, transparente, célere, incluindo todos aqueles que, de algum modo, questionam o programa na matriz de solução, para que deixe de ser só algo que tem encaminhado a passos tão lentos e que possa ser executado em larga escala. Com mais atores envolvidos preparados, nós ampliamos a possibilidade de solidificar o negócio em torno do programa. Eram essas as minhas considerações. Muito obrigada.
Thank you so much. You know, I think we're really excited about Mato Grosso advancing in the LEAP coalition. I speak with a lot of companies that have supply chain footprint in Mato Grosso. I think are really excited about how this jurisdictional RED+ can support their procurement strategies. And with that, I'd like to maybe turn to you, Matthias, as a business that has a sort of agribusiness footprint and connection. You know, tell us how this type of jurisdictional RED+ approach supports that type of engagement, and I think we've talked a lot before around some of the rainfall benefits and looking at agriculture. So we'd love to hear your perspective there.
A few years ago, Bayer acquired a well-known American company, Monsanto. It's probably one of the most complicated business deals, to put it mildly. And we also thank Latham and Watkin for supporting us a lot in dealing with the aftermath of it. But one thing that's pretty clear is that the Cerrado miracle, the change of the agricultural system in Brazil, was driven by the technologies that were developed in Brazil by Embrapa, but also by companies like now Bayer. And when you look at where does the water come from that allows the agricultural powerhouses to be what they are, you can measure that by looking at isotopes of oxygen. You realize there's a lot of so-called green water that fuels the agricultural growth in Brazil. And that green water comes from, as you may guess, rain from the rainforests. Yeah? What is more and more, I think, understood also by the key players in the agricultural sector, that we need to ensure the Cerrado miracle can continue without further land use change at the expense of forests and other valuable biodiversity. For that, though, we also need to reward the communities that have a legal right to chop down their forests. We always talk about illegal deforestation in Brazil. The toughest forest code in the world, we touched on it slightly, would allow owners of that forest to chop down an additional amount of forest that equates to 10 billion tons of carbon emissions. And while everybody understands that's not a good idea, we also need to offer these communities a good deal why they should not do it. And leaf is one key component of that. It takes more than that, but it's one key component. So I think for the food system to avoid major food crises, we need to stop deforestation. And we need to do that as promised in COP26 in Glasgow by 2030. We will not stop deforestation if we leave those communities basically holding the bag for us and point at them and what they are doing. So this is why this initiative makes a lot of sense. The first slides we saw didn't talk so much about the process of engaging the local communities, but you demonstrate where the money goes. And I think that's very important for me as a company to understand who is benefiting from the investment I'm making. And like we've seen in Ghana, a lion's share of that money goes to the local communities. And the same is true for what we are negotiating with Para or what we are negotiating in places like Costa Rica. It's really important to do that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Matthias. And I think it's interesting, we started with the orientation around net zero strategies, compensating emissions on the path to net zero. But now we've been touching on issues like water, on communities. And I think maybe to turn to you, Elise, when EY is advising your clients and clients are thinking about their sustainability goals writ large, how does this type of approach, do you think, support not just a climate strategy, but nature strategies, commodity supply chain strategies? Tell us a little bit more about how you're engaging with your client base.
Yeah, I think that, to sum up what we've heard today, like the approach that is being taken in these types of projects is systemic, and it's a systemic approach. And this we can't solve one of these issues without solving the other or without addressing the other. And that's exactly how we think with our clients, and we work with our clients, that we need to think bigger. It's not just one piece that has to come together as a puzzle, and that systemic thinking is the way that we have to do it. And it's clear that systemic thinking and approach is not going to happen overnight. Obviously, these things take so long, and we're working through many of the projects and problems and challenges that come across, but that's what will make it successful in the long run. And that's what we need to be doing, is really that long-term thinking.
Wonderful. Thanks, Louise. Jamie, do you have any reflections just to
something to add?
Yeah.
I want to say a couple more words about Ghana. I was able to go there earlier this year, and I have to say, when I was on my hey Charles, when I was on my way there, I was a little bit skeptical of the Ghana program. I spent a lot of time in Brazil, and thinking about illegal deforestation and how you kind of start to staunch land speculation and that kind of thing. And in Ghana, I read about this sort of community-based resource management, and in the abstract, you say, okay, deforestation rates go down. It's plausible that that happens for exogenous factors. Resources get allocated to those communities. I'm sure it goes to good things. I'm sure it does good work. But does the community really understand the connection between the two things? And is it effective? Is the allocation of those funds effective in reducing deforestation into the future? We went there. We went out in the field. Thank you, Rosalind, for arranging for all of that. And we spoke with these community leaders. I was blown away. I was just their grasp on climate change, on carbon markets, on pricing in carbon markets, and the connection between and the effects that the deforestation has been having on their own communities was just really, really incredible. And they said, we understand that when the last tree dies, the last man dies, is what I remember he said. And so it was just very, very powerful. And I want to pass along one other quote from our way out. There was a gentleman, he was a traditional leader. He was doing a blessing over some palm wine. And he knew we were there. He knew we were a buyer. I'm not sure he knows what Amazon is, but he said, if you don't show up with the money, I'm going to haunt you from my grave. And so I want to pass that. He said it to me, but I want to pass that on. If you're a company in the room, it applies to you also. And so it was just, I just wanted to, it was inspiring, and I want to pass that along.
You take that in all kinds of different directions. I think hopefully this is giving you a little bit of a glimpse into the day in the life of the LEAF Coalition. We have an amazing group of jurisdictions that are doing this really incredible, scaled, impactful work. And wonderful examples from Ghana, Para, Mato Grosso today. So thank you. And of course, we've got a bunch of pioneering companies, 3 represented here today, but of course, many more also in the room. So with that, we're going to turn to some Q&A. I think first of all, let's thank everyone who shared. And I think we're going to go to some Q&A shortly, or just in a second. So maybe, yeah, I'm getting the nod that we're doing that. So think of your questions. As any transaction and LEAF Coalition moment, it doesn't happen without our amazing pro bono counsel from Latham & Watkins. So I think JP will be potentially joining us up here in a minute. I can't see him, but he'll be here in a second. So can ask the hard legal questions as well. So we've got a few moments. Also a Slido that's up. So if you want to scan the QR code, if I can read the question, it is, what positive outcome comes to mind when you think about investing in forests? So feel free to fill that out whilst also thinking about your questions, and answers are coming in. We've got less CO2, great. Protect biodiversity, improve livelihoods. Everyone's been listening. That's wonderful. Lemurs, yes, fantastic. Climate mitigation, wonderful. Yeah, so seeing a lot of the diverse themes around impact coming through. So we've got Phil with a mic here. Are there any questions that have been coming to mind? Again, we've only scratched the surface here. Very much welcome folks to ask more or share their perspectives. And JP, please come and join us for the hard legal questions, so Sean and I don't have to answer them. Okay, Steve, please, friend, I think there's a mic coming for you.
Thanks. I'm Steve Schwartzman, Associate Vice President for Tropical Forests at the Environmental Defense Fund. Thank you all so much for a really fascinating and informative panel, and for your commitments to this really important idea, which I think many of you know we've worked on for a very long time. Now, something of a devil's advocate question. If you look at the case of Brazil, deforestation, it's a really interesting case. Not only does Brazil have still somewhere in the at least a gigaton of emissions reductions that it achieved back when Lula was in his first and second terms that were never reversed, in spite of everything that the Bolsonaro government and two previous governments could do to try and undermine the policies that brought about these massive 80% reduction in deforestation with, well, production was increasing as Mato Grosso and Pará have also, to which they have contributed very substantially. But it's all in the last 2 years reduced deforestation almost by half, 46%. Again, continuing to be a major agricultural producer. And obviously, it's in terms of the global deforestation, nature-based solutions picture, Brazil is a big piece of the puzzle. You can't solve the puzzle without that piece. How do you all account for the fact that, keeping in mind that no one has been more enthusiastic and invested more in both Emergent and the Leaf Coalition, I'd say, the level of the NGO community than us? How do you account for the fact that the Brazilian federal government is shown itself to be entirely uninterested in what you all are proposing?
I think maybe, do we want to take a couple questions and let people think on that one? And then we'll maybe take 2 or 3 and yeah, let's take maybe 2 more and then let our panel think on that one. If not, maybe Matthias, you look ready to go.
Well, thank you for putting an elephant in the room. I account for that in this way. In every conversation we have with the federal government, we try to change their point of view on it. Also, I mean, I've been sitting opposite to the former president who was very surprised that we are so viciously against deforestation and that we were unhappy with the level of deforestation that happened. So he was very surprised by it. But the point being, the core argument we have is without these kind of initiatives, there won't be enough additional money to convince people who own land that they can convert into agricultural land to stop doing that. And what I can tell from my conversations with key stakeholders on federal level is that people start to realize something is changing. But the most important ally we have are the states. It's a federal system. The United States, there's also a difference sometimes between the federal government and some states. Same is true in Brazil. The more states we win over to come into the fold and be part of the Leaf Coalition, the better our arguments to also convince the federal government.
John, thanks.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for this wonderful panel. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Letícia Guimarães. I'm the lead for carbon markets from UNDP. I have also been following the whole discussion and trajectory, and something that strikes me is what was mentioned before, about the signature in Dubai in 2023, and so much work has been going on. I think here we see the highlights, but we don't see the day-to-day of how much work has been going on in these countries. And of course, having the signal in the end that these efforts will be compensated with higher prices is great. And this is what moving a lot of the countries to follow suit. But I'm wondering if there is any understanding of potentially using different models as the ones of different buyers who are advancing part of the payments or investing in the readiness efforts as well, conscious that consultations cost millions of dollars, that if you are doing high integrity, you need to also invest in high integrity. So I'm wondering if the Leaf Coalition is thinking about this pre-finance as well. Thank you.
I'm happy to take that one, since it's a question about how Leaf's working. Look, this is unquestionable. If you saw all of those presentations, we put in the list of needs, and I think the list is long for all of the countries of the different needs for financing, for upfront financing. People used to conceive of RED as a phased approach where these needs would somehow disappear at the time that the first results-based payments arrived, but it's not even the case. Even when the results-based payments start to flow, countries still require technical assistance, upfront finance, and I think we do need more of that and more innovative ways to provide that. And actually, this panel is missing a key part of LEAF, which is the donors that are involved, the technical assistance partners that are involved, and it's one of the real strengths of LEAF that we're able to, with the countries that we're working with, bring together all of the different TA actors and say, hey, we found some gaps, and pretty significant gaps that still need to be filled. For example, on these very extensive consultation processes that involve tens of thousands of communities in remote areas that maybe the government has not engaged in that way on any issue before. It's very, very costly work. So I think it would be fair to summarize that there were requests in there for more support, and I know there are lots of supporters in the room, and I hope you heard that and took note of that. On our part, we do have a facility to bring forward some of the purchase commitment as advance payments. So those are available to governments if they want to talk to us about that, make that a part of our partnership agreement. It's possible for us to advance some of the funding that they will get for the tons when they're delivered, and then to use that to complete consultation processes, to complete the process to draw up the trees monitoring report and to go through the verification. So we are doing that. We'd love to do more of that. I think it's something we'd like to scale, and we're looking for support to scale that facility.
Great.
Thank you very much, and it's been a wonderful panel. I have 2 points. First is to now I know where all the lengthy ERPA pages came from. So Alejandra, you are free. But maybe it's because you are not charging. So start charging. You see, when you're not charging, you can do so much work. So charge and then 5 pages. But on a more serious note, thank you for all the good work being done for free. But I believe as we go forward, we are learning in this process, and should be conscious to review language in these ERPAs, especially as we want indigenous people and local communities to be engaged. Not that they can't understand, they will understand, they do understand, but in most instances, we don't factor in the time it takes to act, because somebody doesn't want me to speak. Sorry. These are many documents, and you're talking about communities who are doing their farming, who are relying on rain. You can't just have them around all the time, continuously for 2, 3 weeks, 3 months. It just doesn't work that way. So if we can have the ERPA languages simplified, I believe it will help. The second point I want to make is the fact that in all these conversations, we are keeping a very important group out, and I am make a conscious effort to bring them in. And these are the VVBs. For everything we are talking about, the VVBs play a very important role. Now we've kept them out. They come in at a time where, one, they haven't understood the country process. They don't know how long it's taking for the countries to get to where they've gotten to. They're hoping to use a site visit of just about 12, 15 days maximum to understand everything you've done over 10 years. And it doesn't work that way. And so I believe that in these spaces, we should consciously bring in the VVBs, let them get some of these presentations, so that when they get into the space of doing the actual validation and verifications, they can understand, maybe not fully, but at least they come to terms with the level of work that has been done. I mean, as Jamie was saying, I was just telling Leticia here that when Jamie came, he was blown away. The level of engagements we have done in Ghana to bring local communities to understand what a ton of carbon should be on the market is not cheap. But then when you go probably to ask them what is trees, well, Jamie said they might not know what Amazon is, but they know he's a buyer. That's all that suffices for there. Now, if EVB will come in and probably will be asking what is trees, what is the carbon fund methodology? I mean, what's that? Even to the minister, you can't ask the minister that. It's not part of their daily work, but they know that there is a standard that's coming to certify all that we've done. And it looks at safeguards and it does this. So the point that I'm just making is in all these conversations, let's try to bring the VVBs. It's okay that they are third party. We say they are independent, but they are not independent, again, because they come into the space and they verify what we've done for all these years. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Roslyn. And any reflections on those comments? Anyone?
Yeah. Hello. Yeah. Great. Well, thank you very much for the remark. I appreciate the joke too. But look, it's nice to meet you in person. It's been an absolute privilege to work with your team on the Ghana ERPA. And I've been extremely impressed by your team. So thank you for the relationship and the work we've done together. The point is well taken, right? Carbon credits are a physical commodity, and physical commodities have traded for the last 40 years on papers that was written down here at Goldman Sachs in 1992. It's called the ISDA. So when we started thinking about the ERPA for LEAF, we had a decision to make. Should we use market standard commercial agreements, which are used every day to trade commodities by the billions of dollars, right, on Wall Street and in London and in Singapore? Or should we go to a bespoke agreement, which would be LEAF specific? And, we decided to take the approach of trying to use a commercial agreement because we felt that if this market is to scale to the level that we need to address climate change, we need to have instruments that are representative of commercial practices between large companies, right? But there's a drawback to that, which is that these documents are fairly complex and sometimes are not perhaps the best mechanism to achieve what we want to do in the short term. So, we worked through some of these challenges with your team. We're really happy with the result that we got. But I believe that within the LEAF group now, there is an effort to review the documents we're using to streamline them and make them easier to deal with in the future. So we thank you very much for your feedback. It's been taken into account, and hopefully we will see some changes in the future. Thank you.
I think that's a great example of how this type of pioneering public-private initiative is evolving and advancing. And I think for the companies in the room, there's maybe some that are seeing this and thinking, gosh, there's such a wealth of detail, of sort of technical information, contractual information. I guess maybe just a closing question before we move on, because we're getting the time. I'm going to take the liberty to do it. For companies that maybe are sort of in the first steps of engaging, can you share a little bit about what the journey of participating in LEAF is? And if you're a bit like, oh gosh, this seems like a lot, it's fantastic, but how do I actually engage? Maybe I can turn to one of our corporate partners to take us through it briefly.
Maybe I'm a bit of an anomaly because I'm all over all of this all the time. And
yeah, maybe I shouldn't have directed that.
This is the very beginning. And
And we thank you for it.
Yeah. I guess what I would say is this can be a choose your own adventure. Joining a new coalition, the PR associated with that, the engagement associated with that, the meetings associated with that. If that's what you want to do, that door is open. But I think there are we're trying to make it easier for folks to participate in any way that they want. So, if you just want to buy a few credits and you want to skip the kind of the splash, or you want to engage just enough to understand what you want to understand, or if you just want to ride the coattails of bigger companies that are and have dedicated teams and science teams and so on, you can do that too. So barriers to entry are now essentially non-existent. It is a complicated space, and you can take on as much of that complexity as you want, or you can leave it to others, I would say.
On barriers to entry, there's one barrier that mattered a lot to me when we started to be part of this coalition, and all the companies that started were intensively vetted. I remember that by the US government, the Norwegians and the UK government. We had very interesting calls with them. What we don't want is companies who want to go the easy route, i.e., let's not worry about reducing our emissions. Let's just buy ourselves a few credits as being part of LEAF and then be absolved from doing the hard work of reducing emissions. LEAF can be a tiny contribution for us to make progress in the direction of solving the climate crisis, if the companies that are part of it are also serious about the other aspects, most notably cutting their emissions quite aggressively. So that's the only, I want to say, thing that I would like to see in the club members. What I like though, and it's an idea, I remember we over a glass of wine discussed that, what you said earlier, that you nudge your business partners into participating as one of the conditions to be a good partner of Amazon. I think that nudging is really helpful because there are a ton of companies out there that make the following decision. I'm focusing only on emissions reductions, and I do not focus on removals, or I do not focus on investing in nature. I think the flywheel that gets us out of this mess is focusing on all three areas: reducing, removing, and restoring or protecting, no matter how you want to say that, which is why I find it truly important that companies can talk to what they are doing in nature, what they are doing with removals, and what they are doing in the reduction space. I think it's really important that all of us are focusing on all three areas, because without one of those, things will not work. Half of all carbon we humans emit, nature takes off the board through nature-based solutions at the moment. And the bad news is it's less and less. We emit more and more, and nature is less and less capable of buffering this out, which is why we are so focused on nature as a key player here. And the one wish I have is that, like in 1992, biodiversity and climate are being discussed in one meeting instead of having two parallel processes. It's complete madness in my eyes. That would be my closing remarks.
Wonderful. Well, on that note, I think the LEAF Coalition does bring those not just the biodiversity, nature, and climate, but also the people aspects of this as well together. So I think we've seen and heard from our jurisdictions, lights, camera, action, what's going to happen next, I'm not sure. We've heard from our companies. It's been just a tip on the iceberg. We're going to have a reception shortly, but before we do, I think we mentioned there is an ecosystem of partners and supporters, not to mention our sovereign donors from the UK, US, Norway, and Korea that support these transactions, but also a whole wealth of implementing partners as well. So with that, I think we're going to turn over to Santiago Garcia, who leads, I think so anyway, is that right? He leads forest partnerships from EDF. I think the panel is going to stay up here, unless you feel like maybe. Yeah, well, I think we'll sit down. But thanks, everyone. A round of applause for our panel.
Thank you.
Thank you. How are you?
Okay. Hi, everyone. I will try to my intervention be short. Also, I will have the pleasure to introduce one of the important stakeholders in the equation. Corporations, government, but also indigenous people is in the central core of all the efforts that we are doing in order to preserve forests. So before that, I'm going to switch to Spanish, because today we have the presence of different indigenous leaders here. Y me gustaría hablar en el lenguaje materno, en español, con algunos de estos líderes que están el día de hoy. Y no me gusta, el mensaje no es hablar mucho sobre lo que estamos haciendo como EDF. Queremos mencionar, en todo caso, por qué es importante trabajar con los pueblos indígenas, porque es importante tenerlos en el centro de la atención de todo el trabajo que venimos realizando con ellos. Ellos no son los custodios, ellos han protegido la naturaleza, los bosques y la biodiversidad. Es el resultado de la interacción por múltiples generaciones de las personas, de las comunidades, pueblos indígenas, pueblo afrodescendiente, en el bosque como tal. Todo el esfuerzo que estamos haciendo ahora, cuando hablamos de soluciones basadas en naturaleza, no es otra cosa que conocimientos tradicionales que queremos aplicar a una mayor escala, regresando, tal vez mirando hacia el pasado y tratando de entender cómo la sostenibilidad que funcionaba en el pasado puede ser una alternativa a los problemas que estamos enfrentando el día de hoy. Trabajar con los representantes, con los líderes indígenas, no es una tarea fácil y aquí tengo que reconocer la apertura de la perspectiva de los diferentes stakeholders o miembros, gobiernos, corporaciones. Tenemos que tener la sensibilidad y la paciencia para movernos al ritmo de las comunidades y pueblos indígenas como tal. Esto no es una ecuación, no es un proceso que ocurra de forma directa. Es algo que es un proceso que es muy sensible a momentos políticos, es muy sensible a la situación económica y a los contextos locales. Lo que está ocurriendo en un lugar necesariamente en Sudamérica no es algo que se pueda replicar, por ejemplo, en Ghana como tal. En ese sentido, como EDF, tenemos más de 30 años trabajando en Brasil, apoyando a los pueblos indígenas y comunidades locales y creando toda una red de diferentes socios, parceros, que incluyen los gobiernos locales, gobiernos nacionales y otros actores de la sociedad civil. Estamos intentando replicar este modelo con los mismos valores, siempre estando al pie de la gente, y creemos que los enfoques de red jurisdiccional representan una verdadera alternativa para las comunidades locales y pueblos indígenas como tal. En los últimos 3, 4 años que venimos apoyando a la iniciativa LIF como tal, hemos tenido la oportunidad de interactuar en diferentes regiones, principalmente promoviendo la implementación de los planes de distribución de beneficios. Menos del 1% de los fondos climáticos llegan a las comunidades locales y pueblos indígenas. Esto crea una gran diferencia y siempre ha sido un problema muy grande de poder solventar en frente de los ojos de las personas. Si ellos son los dueños de los bosques, si ellos son los que protegen los bosques, ¿por qué el dinero y los potenciales beneficios económicos y no económicos no llegan directamente hacia ellos? Los planes de distribución de beneficios representan una oportunidad de traer transparencia, representan una oportunidad de crear confianza. Es urgente en las diferentes conversaciones que tenemos en Ecuador, lo hemos tenido en Costa Rica, en talleres que hemos tenido en África. Hay esperanza y los pueblos indígenas y comunidades locales vienen y se sientan a hablar de estos temas porque creen realmente que esto es una oportunidad importante para avanzar, hacer las cosas correctas. Pero es urgente que logremos que el dinero, que estos fondos que llevamos hablando lleguen de forma inmediata, lo más pronto posible al territorio para realizar realmente el cambio. El día de hoy tenemos representantes de Ecuador, como el caso de los representantes de la comarca afroecuatoriana del norte, CANE, que vienen trabajando los últimos 3 años alrededor del plan de distribución de beneficios en Ecuador, así como tengo el honor de presentar a la dirigente indígena Alondra Cerdas, que es la representante o la presidenta de la RIPCA, la Red Indígena Bribrica Becar en Costa Rica, que en el 2018 lograron culminar un plan de distribución de beneficios y que el plan de distribución de beneficios ha significado un espacio de diálogo entre el gobierno, los pueblos indígenas con respecto a el potencial uso de los beneficios económicos procedentes de créditos de carbono, cómo deberían aplicarse, no desde una visión impuesta, sino desde una visión que respete las visiones locales y las necesidades locales. Para finalizar, desde EDF estamos siempre a favor de estos procesos y estaremos siempre respaldando una inclusión efectiva y significativa y agradezco en realidad el tiempo y la oportunidad de estos representantes indígenas en seguir luchando por un espacio en la mesa y poder traer sus ideas y sus soluciones a estas discusiones. Muchas gracias y Alondra, por favor.
Bueno, buenas tardes. Bashkina, en el idioma Cavécar, en la lengua Cavécar, es mi lengua natal. Tal vez, bueno, me presento, mi nombre es Alondra Cerdas Morales, soy indígena Cavécar del territorio indígena de Tainí de Costa Rica. Vengo en representación de la red indígena Bribri Cavécar, somos 8 territorios, 20 organizaciones indígenas entre mujeres, asociaciones de desarrollo, redes de guardarrecursos, guardas forestales y red de jóvenes. Tal vez quiero compartir un poco sobre los programas de protección forestal y cómo deben asociarse con los pueblos indígenas y las comunidades locales. Para nosotros, no se trata solamente de la protección de bosques, sino de proteger nuestro medio de vida, ya que para los pueblos indígenas, pues, proteger el bosque va más allá de simplemente árboles, va más allá de cuidar un río, va más allá de cuidar, proteger la biodiversidad. Para nosotros es nuestro medio de vida en general. Convivimos con el bosque, vivimos, aprendemos, extraemos nuestros recursos del bosque y pues ha sido algo que se ha practicado por generaciones, y si hoy estamos acá y tenemos un aire puro para respirar todavía es gracias a nuestros antepasados que han estado haciendo esa labor sin un pago, simplemente porque es nuestra cultura, nuestra tradición. En Costa Rica, pues hemos tratado de llevar un diálogo con el gobierno en cuanto a temas de protección ambiental, creando nuestros propios planes ambientales forestales territoriales, los cuales se crean desde los territorios indígenas y para los territorios indígenas, con los territorios indígenas, los pueblos indígenas y las comunidades. Creemos que nuestro conocimiento y prácticas ancestrales es un profundo vínculo cultural que tenemos y que por lo tanto consideramos que es fundamental en todos estos temas, en los acuerdos que se vayan a tomar, ya sea a nivel nacional, internacional, en cuanto a protección de bosques. Es un aporte grande que hacen las comunidades desde la protección hasta todo este tema que tal vez para nosotros como indígenas es un poco complicado entender términos de CREF, etcétera, etcétera, un montón de términos que se usan. Para nosotros es algo que no cabe en nuestra lengua y pues y es algo que hacemos por naturaleza y que ahora tratan de incentivarnos tal vez económicamente, y en Costa Rica hemos tratado de que este proceso no solamente los beneficios sean económicos, sino que haya otras maneras, digamos que haya un apoyo técnico, institucional, que realmente nos tomemos esto en serio, como dicen, ¿verdad? Y que no solo tomemos a los pueblos indígenas porque nos lo piden para llenar un requisito más, sino que sea la voz de los pueblos indígenas escuchadas a nivel nacional e internacional. Desde la, desde mi propia experiencia, tal vez por así decir, he estado en todo el proceso de red en Costa Rica, la consulta red del consentimiento previo libre e informado ha estado ahí presente, hemos sido parte de la construcción de todos estos procesos en Costa Rica. Ahorita actualmente estamos debatiendo sobre los NDCs, ¿verdad? Y tratamos bueno, el gobierno ha tratado de que nosotros y el gobierno pues tengamos un diálogo fluido a pesar de nuestras diferencias en algunos temas. Sin embargo, la participación de la población indígena ha estado presente. Creemos que somos tal vez un ejemplo, a pesar de que Costa Rica es un país pequeño, hemos tratado de mantener un vínculo cercano en cuanto a temas de protección ambiental y protección de los bosques. Y pues esto sería, y muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Alejandro. Muchísimas gracias, and Santiago. Just a special recognition for Environmental Defense Fund, EDF, who has been a core partner since the very beginning and to this day, and Ruben Lebowski here, formerly of EDF also. So thank you all. So terrific panel. You've heard from now key LEAF stakeholders, the corporate buyers, the forest country sellers, and of course the beneficiaries as represented by Olandra, who are on the front line of forest protection, indigenous people, local communities. We know that these communities need to be part of the solution, integral part of the solution. We need to hold them front and center. But of course, as Sean mentioned, another key part of this, and we couldn't do this without the donor country supporters, the United Kingdom, the United States, and of course, Norway. So for our final word, I'd like to bring up a representative from the government of Norway. Norway, as many of us know in this room, has been, and the generosity of the government of Norway and the people of Norway have really been crucial to not only LEAF, but so much of the good work that's happened in jurisdictional REDD and broader tropical forest protection. So we're very grateful as a community for the generosity of Norway. And so I'm absolutely delighted to introduce Ambassador Hans Bratsker, who is the special envoy for the Norwegian International Climate and Forestry Initiative, and also its first director. So Hans, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much, Aaron, and a good evening to all of you. And it's a great pleasure for me to be here as representative of the Norwegian government and also then of the Norwegian International Climate and Forest Initiative, which we started 17 years ago. We are in the middle of a very decisive decade. 2030, the year by which we need to halt and reverse deforestation, is just 5 short years away. To halt deforestation, we must act rapidly and at scale. Jurisdictional REDD+, JREDD approach is not just a tool, it's the engine for systemic change. It puts governments in the driver's seat, enabling them to implement policies and regulations that work. It unlocks actions only government can deliver, such as effective law enforcement against illegal deforestation, economic incentives to keep forests standing, fair benefit sharing, especially with indigenous peoples and local communities. To tackle deforestation, we need to move forward at pace and with scale, using all available tools. That is why the jurisdictional approach is so vital. And it was highlighted yesterday as one of the key mechanisms at the launch of the Forest Finance Roadmap. Ghana and the Brazilian states of Pará and Mato Grosso show there are many paths to success, but they have also shown us tonight that political will and local ownership are key. All countries face barriers such as limited finance, the need for more training, as we have also heard tonight, capacity needs, and commercial pressures. But we know that collaboration and knowledge sharing deliver results. Ecuador, for example, has strengthened its monitoring system by learning from Brazil's experience. The LEAF Coalition has mobilized over $1 billion for forest protection, committing to support countries that deliver real emissions reductions. Norway has been a proud supporter of the LEAF Coalition since the beginning and will continue to support LEAF and other innovative finance mechanisms. 2030 is, as I said, fast approaching. This year's COP in Belém promises to be a turning point for tropical forests. We look forward to the full launch of the Tropical Forest Forever facility, which has the potential to play an important and complementary role alongside the jurisdictional REDD+ programs that we have heard about this evening. But what we really need is to ensure that forest countries have access to ever-growing sources of funding to support their efforts. When it comes to JRED, this means more investments from the private sector. Several corporations represented here tonight are leading the way as part of LEAF. Many more are needed. Therefore, my call to action this evening goes to all companies in the room. Join us. Put forest protection at the heart of your climate and nature strategies. Together, we can build sustainable economies based on healthy, living forests for the benefit of people, climate, and nature. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador, and thank you to all the speakers and to all of you for coming. I don't know if we have a last speaker yet from the UK. Okay, well, maybe during the reception we'll hear from them. Look, this is a really a fantastic moment, as the ambassador said, with the coming COP30 in the forest and all the energy that's moving towards protecting the world's forest. We think LEAF is playing a really crucial role here, and we really thank and are very grateful for all of our partners and all of you here who have played such an important part of making this happen. So thank you very much.